not different from Krishna. So one who absorbs himself or herself in the holy names would realize that there is really no difference between Mayapur and Sri Vrindavan Dham. There's practically no difference. Now, while in Mayapur, I spent an extraordinary amount of time in the samadhis of the predecessor acharyas. I did not really move around too much. I did not seek to go to places that I had not seen before. We decided to spend a lot of time wanting to chant in the samadhi of the predecessor acharyas, in the samadhi of my spiritual master, in the samadhi of Srila Prabhupada, samadhi of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in the samadhi of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, in the samadhi of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and also in the samadhi of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. We also spent a lot of time chanting in Advaita Bhavan in Shantipur, receiving the mercy of Lord Advaita Acharya. Now, while chanting in these places, something extraordinary that was noticed or was perceived by us was the fact that the pure devotees of the Lord 500 years back, like Haridas Thakur, the Namacharya, they did not preach by walking around immensely. Their circle of preaching was within a very small radius, relatively speaking. It was within Bengal. Haridas Thakur was commissioned by Lord Chaitanya, he and Lord Nityananda, to go down to Bengal, to Gaudadesh. And Gaudadesh those days was a combination of Orissa and Bengal. So that was the area. It was not a very broad area of preaching, if you notice. But then look at the manifestation of the movement from 500 years back to today. Look at the potency of the personalities. Haridas Thakur sat under a tulasi tree and he chanted the pure names. And 500 years later, he is still motivating us to chant. That is preaching. Can you understand how powerful that is? That 500 years back, someone engaged in the chanting of the holy names, and that is motivating millions, billions, 500 years later, and is expected to motivate people 10,000 years from now. So what is the potency of the preaching that was done by Haridas Thakur? The potency of the preaching was not so much in his endeavor, it was more so in his purity. And purity and endeavor of serving the holy name is more important than activity that we could perform. Why? Because there is a need for us to step out. There is a need for us to step out and distribute the message of the Bhagavad Gita. There's a need for us to step out and talk to people. But more important than the need and the endeavor for us to be able to engage in that activity is our need for purity. Go back again to the Acharyas in Vrindavan, the Goswamis. The Goswamis of Vrindavan are still motivating us 500 years down the line. The literature that they provided and their realizations are the basis of Krishna consciousness 500 years hence. And where they moving around? They were in Vrindavan, sitting under trees, no infrastructure, and they were sharing their realizations through Shastra. They were engaging in the chanting of the Mahamantra. The pure chanting of the Mahamantra 500 years back is what is spreading the movement today. So the pure chanting that we do is what is going to carry forward this movement even forward. The pure chanting and the dedication to the holy names that we would take up is going to be the basis for us to move forward. Please understand this. So now again, going back to the Bhagavad Gita and making a comparison. We are not dependent, the movement is not dependent, our own spiritual future is not dependent on our endeavor. It is dependent on mercy. We are Kripa Siddhas. And mercy is going to be given by Krishna through the chanting of the holy names, because that is the Yuga Dharma. Have no mistake about it. Our dedication and our time and our focus should be in chanting and cultivating a desire to chant the holy names. If we come in contact with the preacher then we are looking for a message on how to improve our chanting of the holy names. If we are going to be eating and sleeping, we are going to be focusing on how we could eat, sleep, and maintain this body to chant the holy names. Go back again to Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. He was a Babaji. In other words, he was not quiet moving around in the mission of preaching. He was sitting and chanting in the holy dham. His pure chanting allows us to reflect and carry us forward 150 years hence. He left his body 100 years ago. So now we are in a spot where we are sitting and we are talking about Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. We are being inspired by him. So what is the potency which is inspiring us? It is the chanting of the holy names. Do you realize the connection? So there is a clear connection between the Kurukshetra war and the dependence of Arjun. So now there is a need for skills, a need for archery in Arjun, but he was completely dependent on Krishna. In a similar vein, there is a need for us to develop skills in preaching. There is a need for us to step out and distribute books. There is a need for deity worship, but we are completely dependent on the mercy of the holy names. We are completely dependent on the mercy of the holy names, without distinction, without any difference. We are completely dependent. So that's the realization, which is the predominant realization, that we want to be able to chant. And we make all kinds of endeavor, we make all kinds of changes to our lifestyle for us to be able to chant nicely. Chanting is more important than anything else. Chanting is more important than anything else. The rest of our time should be focused on removing obstacles that prevent us from chanting. If you meet a sadhu, your time should be spent in asking him on how to chant better. You should be spending time and turning around your lifestyle by keeping Krishna in the form of the holy names right in the center. Because if you do not keep the chanting of the holy names right in the center, there would be challenges. There would be great challenges. Because that is the Yuga Dharma. That is what is going to carry us forward. Krishna has come in the form of his holy names. The chanting of the Mahamantra is what is going to carry us forward. We are dependent on the chanting of the Mahamantra. We are completely dependent on the chanting of the Mahamantra. Srila Prabhupada used to say that yes, we don't need temples. We don't need any infrastructure. If we could just chant nicely. Since we don't have the ability to chant nicely, we are engaging in all these endeavors and trappings because we require those distractions for us to be able to get it. If we could do what the Goswamis did, was to find a bead bag and beads and sit under a tree and then call out the holy names, then there's absolutely no need to worry. Do you realize? So we are dependent on the mercy of the holy names. Make no mistake about it. If you are having challenges in chanting the holy names of Krishna, you are having challenges in devotional service. You are having challenges in spiritual life. It's time you had a conversation with whoever you have confidence in. Make no mistake about it. Because this is the most important aspect. Everything else is going to revolve around it. The chanting of the holy names is what is going to provide intelligence to us to function as a professional. The chanting of the holy names is what is going to give us intelligence to be a proper father or mother. The chanting of the holy names is what is going to allow us to perform our duties. Purity is required, and purity is not going to come without the chanting of the holy names. And what is purity? What is the definition of purity? What is the definition of purity? Everybody has a notion on what purity is. What is purity? Purity is where we can keep Krishna 100% in the center. We keep Krishna in the center and understand our position that we are his servants by remaining in the periphery. 100%. Every decision of ours is going to be based on how we can keep Krishna consistently, week after week, day after day, hour after hour, in the center, no matter where we are and what activity we engage in. Now replace Krishna with the holy names. Purity is our ability to keep the holy names right in the center. And we take decisions in our life based on our ability to keep the holy names in the center. Am I going to be choosing a career which would allow me to chant nicely? Am I going to be choosing a career which would allow me to endeavor to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya, which is the beauty of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the chanting of the Mahamantra throughout the world? Am I going to be able to do that? Am I going to be able to do that? Am I going to be able to keep the holy names right in the center? People cannot relate to Krishna. They cannot relate to Krishna, but you can surely relate to the holy names. You can surely relate to the objective of being able to chant nicely. Spiritual life would suffer if we cannot chant nicely. If the whole objective of existence is to keep the holy names in the center and we lead life and plan according to it, then we would be able to make advancement. Our advancement is dependent on the effort that we put in chanting the holy names. That is what is going to draw mercy. That is the Yuga Dharma. That is the prescription for this age. How could you move away from a prescription? How could we heal ourselves if we move away from a prescription? There's a certain diet and there's a certain prescription. There's needing for both diet and medicine for us to be able to recover fully from the material disease. The material disease of identifying with this body. India is rapidly progressing where there is a certain intensity of identifying with the body. There's great consumerism. The same consumerism that was seen here in the States is being seen now in India. It's extraordinarily difficult to be in a city in India and practice devotional service if you're employed. People come home at 8:30, 9 in the night, which is their lifestyle. We don't have such problems here in the States. We don't. Life is much, much easier. We have the ability to be away from so many different things which could be potential distractions being here in the States. Right? So we already have been given what we need. This is exactly what we need. We have been given mercy. When a guru or a preacher, a sadhu is visiting in India, we don't have the ability to even get close to them. But here, you have the ability to have a conversation, prolonged conversation. So there is some very special mercy which is being bestowed upon us by Lord Gauranga, by Lord Nityananda, knowing fully well that we could be more distracted here than anywhere else. But in reality, it's much easier. Because here, you can distinguish what is right and what is wrong. In India, it's not possible. It looks right. It looks right. Someone dresses up like a sadhu. He looks right, but he is not. Very difficult. It's more dangerous. In fact, it's said that, in spies, saboteurs or people who enter into areas to cause damage, most damage is caused by someone who dresses up like an insider. More damage than the actual enemy who is outside. Right? So in India, it's very difficult to distinguish activity which is spiritual and which is material. People are glued to TV sets. Right? They get their spiritual instructions, they get their material instructions, everything is done through the TV. Right? Everyone is flipping through channels early in the morning. Right? There are so many channels, and they find their gurus through the TV, which is fine, but it stops there. It stops right there. There's no progress. It does not lead to association. They believe that they have done their part by waking up and then tuning in and flipping through channels. They believe that a little pranayam, a little focus on what's being said on TV is good enough, right? They believe they are making progress, and the rest of the time they're glued to the TV set. Incredible. People are glued to the TV set. There are serials, and I don't know what is there, but you can't disturb them while you're watching TV. It's extraordinarily difficult to even distract them. It's amazing. But that's India. We don't have a problem here because we can very clearly distinguish that we don't want to watch TV because while you watch TV, the consciousness of those who are a part of the TV experience. If someone is in a bar and you're watching someone who is in a bar, who is dancing in a discotheque, or engaging in some illicit activity, you're watching, but in reality is as good as engaging in such, because you're participating in the same consciousness. Our mind gets quite absorbed, and we engage in that endeavor because we are watching something and we kind of plug into it. Just as much as when you hear the message of the Bhagavad Gita, you have a tendency to identify with it. This is a samskara, an impression that's being cast in the subtle consciousness while we speak. Right? In a similar fashion, you watch TV, it causes impressions. So here, you can avoid because you know that, okay, you don't want to be watching something because it's obnoxious. But in India, you think it's okay, and people watch, and they're completely caught up. They're completely absorbed and caught up in the multitude of channels. It's amazing. It is amazing. They're completely caught up. So we are quite blessed to be here in many ways. Life is much easier. It's not as much of a struggle as it is in India. Right? Here. It is good. It's good, Mataji. It's very good. It's very good if you can do everything yourself. That's right. See? Okay, maybe Mataji, you two should have a conversation. आपकी समस्या के लिए, she gave an answer. So, that's right. That's right. It's a huge thing. It's a huge problem. There are many people who. It was interesting. While I was in Chennai, I have a tendency to talk to the drivers and so on, just to get to know what lifestyles are and what's happening. And I was hearing from him saying that no one in Madras or Chennai engages in menial work. I was quite surprised. And I asked him why. He said, the real estate value has gone up so much that everybody thinks they are crorepati's. So they don't really see a need for them to engage in any menial work. So all the masonry work and the building and the construction and all the menial work and security is being done by people from elsewhere. Incredible. They have migrated to Chennai and they man all the toll booths. They are all the security guys. And things which normally would be done by local people, because local people feel extraordinarily affluent. They don't want to take up activity. Right? Incredible. So you can imagine trying to get something done by someone who thinks it's a crorepati. We don't feel that way. But there everybody is, they seem to be millionaires. Everybody practically. So it's amazing. It's amazing. It's a different kind of hell. So again, coming back to the topic, we want to focus and be able to keep the holy names in the center. So if at all we are already in 2012, fortunately or unfortunately I was not able to be here during the New Year's. But for us, the New Year starts with Gaur Purnima. The New Year is not so much the Gregorian calendar which is followed in the West. Our calendar centers around Lord Chaitanya. His birth anniversary every year is the beginning of a new year. And we make a commitment to surrender to his mission every year. So this is a new year. And Even if you take up 2012, January, which is right at the beginning, you would want to do some planning. If material life requires planning, so does spiritual life. If material life requires the setting of goals, so does spiritual life. In the corporate environment, you need goal setting, right? You have long-term goals, you have short-term goals, and then you break it down into activity that has to be done on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, an hourly basis for us to be able to achieve our goals. So when we have short-term and long-term goal setting that is happening in the corporate environment, so is the case with spiritual life. Spiritual life, we have been told that we have to develop pure devotional service. Right? We have been told we have to develop pure devotional service. We have to develop purity. We have to be able to keep the mission of Lord Chaitanya right in the center. We want to keep the holy names right in the center and build our lives around it. But how do you do pure devotional service, which is 24-hour absorption in the chanting of the holy names, which seems so far away? We break it down into activity. What is it which I'm supposed to do to gain mercy? What are the pillars of mercy? We have spoken about it several times. What do we consider as mercy? Ability to chant better, ability to read better, ability to associate and serve better. So these are pillars of mercy. When we can chant better, read better, associate and serve better, we consider that we have received Kripa of Krishna. Because every one of these activities is going to bring us closer to our position of being able to keep Krishna in the center. Every one of these activities. Right? So we break down these activities and we set goals based on these activities for the year. If you were chanting one mala the previous year, you endeavor to increase this year. If you were reading, you endeavor to increase. Many of us, or most of us, do not have the habit of reading. Unfortunately, we do not have the habit of reading. And the scriptures have been given so that we could read and we could participate in the Leela of Krishna through the scriptures. We could participate and live the Shastra. But before you even live the Shastra, you need to know what the Shastra is. You need to pick up reading. Because our attention span is so short that we cannot even read for an hour together. So one of the best ways for us to be able to read is to pick up a book and spend 20 minutes reading 3 or 4 pages. Another 20 minutes reading some other book. Another 20 minutes reading some other book. If you distribute your reading time of 1 hour amongst 3 books, you would be able to hold your interest. If you do not have an hour, take up reading for 5 minutes. Take up reading for 5 minutes. It's very easy. If you are used to doing activity around a place for a prolonged period of time, keep a book right at that spot. You will be able to open up the book and read a couple of pages. You cannot hope to understand your experiences unless you read. Reading and hearing. A good recommendation for Prabhus and Matajis is you read to each other in the family. The children can read because you read and you listen. Spend 5 minutes. Start with 5 minutes if you do not have time. But those 5 minutes every day would add up. So set up goals for reading. If you have not touched a book in many, many years, imagine Prabhupada, until his last breath, was focused on his mission of writing books. He was translating until his last breath. He stopped eating. He could not drink. He could not sleep in the last month, but he was translating. He was translating after sleeping for 2 or 3 hours for the most part of his 15, 20 years outside of Vrindavan. Yeah, you can see that on YouTube. You can go and see his last few hours, and he was giving instructions on the books. He was constantly giving instructions. Reading, I'm actually talking about receiving the Kripa of Krishna. Kripa of Krishna takes on several forms. It takes on the form of being able to chant nicely, right? If you chant nicely, you will be able to realize that you are not this body. That is Kripa. Okay? If you chant nicely, you will be able to make progress. That is ultimate Kripa. If you read, the reading will inspire you to chant nicely. So when I'm saying about reading, I'm not talking about mundane literature. I'm talking about literature that would allow you and inspire you to keep Krishna in the center, in the form of his holy names. So take on a goal for 2012. If you have not done it before, take this goal on. Spend 5 minutes every day. Focus on reading one verse of the Bhagavad Gita and the purport. And it really does not matter as to whether you are learning how to pronounce the Sanskrit. It does not matter as to whether you absorb things fully. Just get into the habit of reading. Spend 5 minutes. If you have not chanted ever in your life, start today. Because that's the mission of Lord Chaitanya. That is the Yuga Dharma. We cannot hope to make any progress without the chanting of the holy names. Start today. Take on a goal. It would be 7 minutes of your time to chant one mala of the Mahamantra. Just 7 minutes. And the association part. There's nothing which is accomplished without the mercy of the Vaishnavas. There's nothing which is accomplished without the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Associate carefully, understanding that Kripa, Krishna's Kripa, is going to come through the Vaishnavas. It is understood, actually I can share this, around six years back, my spiritual master had just passed away. Just passed away an hour. It is just an hour in Gitanagari. I was there, and Srila Dhanurdhar Swami was also there. He was consoling me, and while consoling me, he just expressed his realization, and he said, "It is so wonderful to pass away in the presence of Krishna." And I was thinking that he was able to perceive the presence of Krishna, which I was not able to. But then he explained his realization. He said, my spiritual master was lying, and actually I saw him. He was lying on a bed. There was one of my godbrothers holding a Giriraj Shila at the top of his head. Radhanath Swami was sitting next to his bed. His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj was sitting next to his bed, and he was holding a Giriraj in the hands of my spiritual master and then closing it with his palm. Someone was holding Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet very close to him. There were devotees all around him. There were 100 devotees plus outside who were all calling out the holy names. So Dhanurdhar Maharaj explained that it is wonderful to pass away in the presence of Krishna. And he meant that there were hundreds of devotees calling out the holy names, and Krishna is present through the holy names. There were devotees, Vaishnavas, around. Krishna is present wherever there are Vaishnavas. Right? So when we talk about association, we really have to focus on the fact that we have no hopes unless we associate with devotees. And we have to associate quite carefully. You got to realize that you have to associate quite carefully, because Krishna is present in the hearts of the devotees. Right? You have to associate quite carefully. There are instructions on association given in the Upadesha Amrita, the instructions, the nectar of instructions by Srila Rupa Goswami. Right? On association. So it's extraordinarily important for us to understand that every Vaishnava who has come into our life is mercy. Every Vaishnava, practically. And if you are able to turn your consciousness in such a manner, you would be able to see what form that mercy has taken. Since we have a propensity to criticize, we have a propensity to find fault in the lives of others, we have a propensity to see everyone across, and first thing that comes across to our eyes is how wrong they are in their endeavor. We have a tendency to identify with material nature. We immediately come across and touch upon material nature. We cannot see Krishna consciousness. We do not see the spiritual side of a person. But if we understand, if we completely understand that the presence of a person in our life, the presence of a Vaishnava, is mercy, then we will have the ability to understand and be able to see in what form that mercy has presented ourselves to us. Right? It is said that someone who is jaundiced would see everything in yellow. Right? You have jaundice, so you're seeing everything through a jaundiced eye. So that's unfortunate circumstances. Since our heart is contaminated, we see the same contamination in others. But if we endeavor and understand that the presence of the other person in our life is pure mercy, then we will see mercy. You're going to see what you're going to be thinking it is. So now we understand that the association of devotees is extraordinarily important. It's extraordinarily important because that is most important. And the association of devotees is not going to be better in some other place. It is not going to be better. Someone who cannot fix their consciousness in the place where they're resident will not be able to fix their consciousness anywhere they go. It's as simple as that. If you think that there is going to be a better set of devotees, if you think there's going to be a better temple, there's going to be better circumstances for you to associate with the Vaishnavas, you're mistaken. Because the problem is with us. It's not with someone who is around. If you're able to associate wherever you are and accept the association as mercy, then we make progress. If we cannot, then we would be going around searching for places throughout our life. Because there will be perfection, imperfection everywhere, one way or the other. So association is extraordinarily important. So what is our goal of association for the year? What is our goal for association for the year? The goal of association for the year is to endeavor to inspire ourselves every day by looking at devotees around us and thinking about devotees as mercy. Especially work with those who you have disagreements with. As long as you have disagreements, you will be coming back to this world to settle those disagreements. Disagreement, work on those. Because you will be coming back. No matter how wonderfully you advance, if you have a problem, then you will have to come back to fix the problem. That's material consciousness. Krishna is not going to allow us to graduate and go beyond if you have a problem. You're going to come back. Remember that. I don't think you do. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about someone who is not. I don't think that's an issue. Maybe we can talk about it after. Right. So, yes. What's your name? Aditya, bro. Thank you. What we speak is not our opinion. It's not. What we speak and share is based on Guru and Shastra. We do not speak opinions that are different. So, from a perspective of differences, there could be differences that are superficial. Differences that are superficial. For instance, religion is quite different, right? There are superficial differences between Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, so on and so forth. There are certain kind of eating habits amongst different cultures. But then deep down, when we go very deep into our own faith, we are able to understand the faith of others. So the differences melt away. So there is going to be differences, but if you go deep enough, you will be able to celebrate the difference. If we are superficial in our own faith, then we only see the differences. So conflicts, I agree, will occur, but conflicts are a means for growth. And that's exactly what I was talking about. We may have conflicts, we may have differences, but it is a means for us to be able to grow and be able to see a common platform in the other person, even though apparently there are differences. So I may have differences, materially speaking, with you. But if I start going deep enough and you start going deep enough, we would be able to have a dialogue at a much deeper level, and we would find that we have a lot more in common than being different. It is. Mhm. That's, in that scenario, there would be. That's exactly where there needs to be a lot of work. There needs to be a lot of work on ourselves. When we start going deep enough and we purify ourselves, when we purify ourselves, we would be able to see the reasoning of the other person. The shifting of consciousness, the shifting of consciousness is not so much an activity that only changes us. If we shift our consciousness, we have the ability to transform others as well. Because you got to understand one thing. You got to realize that any kind of material calamity, any kind of complexity that we face in life is a part of what we have asked for by our own actions over several lifetimes. The first point which we have to make and understand is that we are responsible for who we are. We are responsible for the situation that we are in. Because we, in one form or the other, ask for it. It may not have been directly, but then we ask for it because this is the law of karma. This is the universal law of karma because we arranged our circumstances as we are today. Though it may not be directly perceptible to us as to how we could have engineered such harm upon ourselves. It may not be. In some cases it is clear, in some cases it may not be, because for instance, who could explain the suffering of someone who is extraordinarily young? We start wondering, oh, such a person never committed anything wrong. Why is the person in such pain? But in reality, there's a past. So, the point which I'm trying to make here is if we are in a situation of conflict, we are in a situation of anguish and pain in our lives, It's a great need for us to be able to endeavor to change and to shift our karmic reactions. Not everybody goes through the same circumstances in life. Not everybody has a problem in the workplace. Not everybody has a problem at home. Not everybody has a problem with health. These are very specific events in the lives of people. So there is an opportunity that when we shift our consciousness and we take on the chanting of the holy names very seriously, and we are shifting our external and internal consciousness and karma, then there is a transformation that occurs in the patterns that we have set. Husband and wife, sometimes parents and children, co-workers, these are arrangements and you find which are extraordinarily complex, but these are arrangements that have been made because these are specific aspects of our life that we needed for us to be able to resolve. There was a certain consciousness that was present in us in the past which did not allow us to make progress. Because remember, we are evolving as souls, lifetime after lifetime, and our experiences are allowing us to evolve. Now, this is an experience that has to allow us to evolve. We use that as a platform of evolvement, understanding that this is a conflict that is created in my life. This is some disturbance that has been created in my life, either in the workplace, at home, wherever, in any combination. And this has to do with my activity and my consciousness from the past. So if I were to shift the consciousness and if I were to shift my karma going back millions of years, then I would be making a shift forever. The results of such endeavor may not manifest itself in this lifetime, but be assured that the future is better. Right? There are many, many people who face problems in relationships, and then they simply can't figure out why they have problems. And it is not so much a problem with a certain person. It is a problem with the aspect or the karmic aspect or the angle of relationship in their lives. You realize? So it could be that they move from one relationship to the other and they face the same problems because nothing has changed in terms of shifting and moving away the karmic reactions. But on the other hand, if we endeavor to serve the mission of Lord Chaitanya by chanting the holy names and we keep Krishna in the center, we are taking on the identity of being a servant of Krishna. We are giving up other identities and other false identities, the false ego. Everyone has an ego. And do we need an ego? So there is an ego, we do. An ego, literally, is an identity. So there are two kinds of identities. You can take on the identity which is natural, which is deep, which is at the spiritual level, and that identity is being a servant of Krishna. Or you could take on an identity that is concerned with the physical body. Right? Absolutely. No, I welcome queries. Yeah. No, it can be more. I was not trying to put any buckets to the combinations. In both cases, it may not be apparent, but I know of cases where every time the person takes up a new job, after a year or so, they get into trouble with their boss. So it's not so much a situation where it is just restricted to home. It can happen professionally as well. And everything is karmic. Everything is karmic. The amount of free will that one has, be it at home or be it at work, is completely dependent on their purity. The more pure a person is, the greater their level of free will. It's like someone who is a well behaved child. The parents allow them to act according to their own volition. But on the other hand, someone who is not a well behaved child or has a history or a pattern of misbehavior, there are constraints put on the person. In some cases, they have the ability to get out of situations. In some cases, they are thrust headlong into situations where they don't seem to have a choice. At least to their head, they appear they have a choice, but in reality, they don't. In reality, we have to reflect on it. We don't have much of a choice for most things. As you rightly pointed out, we can't choose our parents, we can't choose our children. Let me also say this. We cannot choose our spouse either. The experience, at least. We can choose the person, but the experience is not something that is of a great choice for us. It is karmic. Be it whoever it may be a wonderful person, there will be a problem. Be it someone who is extraordinarily obnoxious, there could be a problem because we have a pattern which is complex. We've got to work through our own patterns. We have to take responsibility. And when we start endeavoring with such responsibility, then we make progress. What we could do is we could have a conversation after the fact as well, right? Because it'll help. Because, but these are good questions. I do welcome those questions. It allowed us to share a few things about conflict, allowed us to share a few things about karma, which was not the plan. But I guess this was Krishna's plan. So we just go along with his plan. Yeah. Say that again. Decisions are there. Hmm. 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 You are exercising your free will. You are exercising your free will. You have the ability to stay away from the association of devotees. But you choose to come and associate with devotees because you recognize that there's mercy. So you're exercising your free will. The presence of a conflict in the mind of being able to take the right decision or not is not something that an individual is free of as long as there is a human body. A material body has certain impulses. We are not inert matter. We are conscious beings. There would be motivations. But then what do we do when such motivations arise? Right? Someone who is in sadhana bhakti, someone who has not reached the purity or the level of purity which is required, would receive mercy, would lose taste, but there would still be some attraction to material propensities. Someone who has attained purity would be the need or the stimulation of material nature and distraction would be almost imperceptible. One who is in the highest stage of Krishna Prema, they don't even perceive a distraction because they are completely transcendental. So as long as we are in this body, you are going to be distracted and you're going to be presented with choices. The choices and the distraction would be heavier initially, but as we make progress, then the decision making becomes much easier. The progress is what is required. The more and more and more we develop a higher taste, then the conflicts of what should I do and what path should I choose becomes easier. So it's a matter of progress. It's a matter of us being able to develop purity and develop a higher taste. Param drishtva nivartate. You constantly develop a higher taste. You develop a higher taste and you endeavor to develop a higher taste. You should be able to see this. If you have been a part of the Bhakta Vriksha, if you have been in the Sangha, if you have been listening to classes, if you have been practicing devotional service by chanting, by endeavoring in service, and so on and so forth, over year after year, every year you should be able to see progress. Devotional service is not so much of being on a plateau. You are either making progress or you are regressing. You cannot be on a plateau. You cannot cruise along for long. We may think that we are cruising along. So it is said that the road of progress to devotional service exists, the path of purity. We could be walking on the road year after year, and we should be noticing perceptible changes in development of taste. As I said, we should be able to chant better. We should be able to read better. We should be able to associate, and we should be able to serve better year after year. Right? If that doesn't happen, then there is a problem. So what I'm trying to say is, as we develop a higher taste, as we increase our quantity and our quality of service to the holy names, automatically the conflicts would lessen. Conflicts arise because there are multiple identities. I have an identity which is a part of this body. I have an identity of being Krishna's servant. So now I have a conflict because I'm thinking I'm this body and I have to take a decision based on the impulse of the body. But then intelligence tells us that I heard that I'm not this body. I'm Krishna's servant. Then we take a decision being, oh, I'm Krishna's servant, I'm supposed to act in a certain manner. As years progress and our body consciousness goes down because we develop a higher taste, as we reduce our karmic burden, as we become pure, slowly, steadily, as we lose body consciousness, the conflicts of taking decisions on what is right and what is wrong go down because more and more and more we understand we are not this body. We are Krishna's servants. That's exactly what we spoke about, that we want to constantly endeavor to keep the holy names in the center. We want to constantly arrange our lives so that we could chant better. Right? The whole purpose of serving, the whole purpose of associating, the whole purpose of anything that we do related to Krishna is to be able to chant better. Please remember that. Right? The whole purpose of anything we do in association with Krishna consciousness is for us to be able to chant better. If you cannot chant better, then you would be better off stopping that activity. If someone is thinking that they're spending 2 to 3 hours worshipping the deity while they are not able to chant better, I would say stop worshipping the deity, pick up the beads, because Krishna is the holy name. So now we take a decision based on what is going to allow me to chant better. I may have a conflict. I may have a distraction. I would want to probably ask myself, is this distraction worth it? Should I be chanting? Should I be focusing on chanting? Wouldn't it be better for me to chant? If I do this, I will not be able to chant. If I do this, I will be able to chant. So you constantly calibrate based on whether it's going to allow you to chant better. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you constantly evaluate your choices based on whether it's going to allow you to chant better. That's what this is all about. Is it good to cut off the relationship? See, work on yourself first. Work on yourself first. Because Krishna, as I said earlier, is presenting a complex person in your life for you to understand where you are. Right? We have come into this material world to learn to love properly. We do not have the ability to love. We are a part of the spiritual world. We cannot enter into the spiritual sky where there's pure love without learning to love properly. So we have been put into this world specifically like a school so that we could learn to love properly. So that could be a person who is in our life who is extraordinarily difficult. Work on ourselves so that we would be able to extend our love to that person. It need not be that you have to compromise on certain situations. It need not be that you have to be a doormat. It need not be that you have to completely change your personality. You have to understand to yourself. You have to understand first place. Understand that the person who is with you is someone who has been sent by Krishna to teach you to become better. Once you start thinking in that manner, you would be able to see the other person who you have a problem with as mercy. And when you see the other person as mercy, you will know how to deal with mercy. If you see the other person and their qualities as purely a curse, then it will remain a curse. You start seeing the other person as mercy, it will become mercy. I am talking about our karma. We have problems because of our karma. What do we do when we get an apple from the market? What do we do? You take an apple, you cut it up, and you keep it before the altar, and you request Krishna, accept it. And the moment he accepts it, what does the apple become? Spiritual. Matter becomes spirit because Krishna is involved. A conflict is matter. You involve Krishna in the conflict, it becomes a spiritual experience. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is the same principle. You can bring in and involve Krishna in anything, sincerely. You're looking at some conflict in your life, you're looking at a person in your life who you believe is really a pain in the neck. Right? Then you start looking at the person, which could be reality, you start looking at the person and saying, this is mercy, Krishna has arranged it for some special purpose. It will become that. It could. It could. It could apply to anyone. The example, there are umpteen number of examples. Now, please understand that examples in the Shastra and the lives of saints is purely given to show us what is possible. Krishna sends his very special servants to show us what is possible. Okay? It's possible. You could be in an alien environment. This is an alien environment for every one of us. We don't belong here. We may think we belong here. We don't belong here. This is an alien environment. We are in a body which is a prison suit, right? Something which is constantly making demands and does not allow us to remain in peace cannot be such a wonderful proposition. We are Satchitananda. Our eternal nature is to be full of bliss. Then why are we so sad? So we are quiet in a place which is not such a wonderful place. Now, can we be a part, your question was, can there be a resolution or conflict, I'm sorry, an issue with non-Vaishnavas? Of course. It could. one of the instructions given by Lord Chaitanya is that we don't associate with non-Vaishnavas. In other words, people who can influence us in another way, right? Now, your original question was, can there be any use or can it be Krishna's arrangement that he is putting in a conflict with a non-Vaishnava? Our endeavor is to understand that basically any experience of ours has been arranged by the Lord and it is mercy. That should be our endeavor. But what we should always try and do is to constantly gravitate and spend time with Vaishnavas because that is favorable for us. Because in the early stages, it becomes very difficult. So, for example, you are making a specific endeavor to associate mostly with Vaishnavas, but yet you are presented with a certain circumstance of conflict. You accept everything as Krishna's mercy, and you'll be able to see how it is Krishna's mercy. I can give you a quick example, very simplistic example. A few years back, I was actually trying. I went over to ShopRite here in Piscataway, and the next day was Jagannath's Rath Yatra, and I took a couple of devotees so that we could buy flower bouquets. They were making garlands, and they ran out of flowers. So I took a few devotees. We went to ShopRite so that we could buy bouquets, and it was around 11:30 in the night. I think they closed by 12. So the clerk in the counter, she was quite upset because she suddenly saw a fellow coming with 12 bouquets. She was quite upset, and she basically treated us very indifferently. It was very bad, and there could have been two ways in which I could have taken it. I could have taken it in a manner where I could have said that that person is so obnoxious. I could have allowed her to spoil my mood, but at that time, it allowed me, Krishna's mercy allowed me to be able to see that as Krishna's arrangement. And I was able to see that for most part, I treat Krishna with such indifference. The deity form in our house, we don't even recognize that Krishna is right there as the deity. I treat him with such indifference, but yet there is so much love and there's so much affection and so many wonderful arrangements that are being made by him. So it kind of gave me a sense as to what that indifference is all about. I was able to see that experience which I had with the woman at 12 in the night as mercy, because I was able to understand that my own action with Krishna was of a similar nature. I treat him the way the woman had treated me. I walk in, I'm indifferent, I don't worship my deities on time, and so on and so forth. So that was a wonderful realization, because that gave me some impetus for me to be able to serve better. Now, that is one circumstance. In the Shastra, you can also see several beautiful things which are happening. So in the case of, for instance, Haridas Thakur, he is the Namacharya. He is the most potent Acharya of the holy names. Extraordinary position. You have Yuga Dharma of Lord Chaitanya's movement of chanting the holy names. And here is a personality who is called the Namacharya. You can imagine the connection. It's a very powerful personality because the Yuga Dharma is chanting and he is the Namacharya. But what was his experience? There was, a Muslim ruler, a Mohammedan ruler in Bengal, who was aware of the fact that Haridas Thakur was a Muslim prior. So he caught him and he wanted him to stop chanting the holy names. He said, you have to stop chanting the holy names because you are committing aparad towards Allah. Right? You're chanting, something, what do they call infidels, right? You're chanting something which is kafir. You are being a kafir, where you are acting in a manner which is contradictory to the dictum of Islam, and you are a Mohammedan. How could you be doing it? But Haridas Thakur could not stop. To make him stop, he instructed the soldiers. He became irate. He instructed his soldiers, beat him up. Right? Beat him up, and they bet him and actually whipped him in 22 marketplaces. And the whipping that he got was so intense that even in one marketplace, the one whipping that he got could have killed a person. But they bet him in 22 marketplaces. But he completely swooned and he was thrown into the Ganges. His body crossed over to the other side and Lord Chaitanya picked him up. When he awoke, he saw lashes on the back of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya took all the lashes instead of Haridas Thakur. Now, while he awoke, Lord Chaitanya was extraordinarily angry because his devotee was hurt. But Haridas Thakur made a mention to the Lord saying, "Forgive them, because you are mercy personified. You have come here with the mood of spreading mercy. You cannot hurt someone, no matter how they behave. You have to give them benedictions. Let them chant." This was his mood. Now, we may say that was Haridas Thakur, he was a Namacharya, so on and so forth. But then I'm giving you a conflict between a pure Vaishnava, an exalted personality, and complete non-Vaishnavas, the Yavanas, someone who is not connected to Vedic religion. Why did Krishna arrange that? He basically wanted to show the protection of the holy names. He wanted to show complete dedication, right? Complete dedication even against such adversity. So the revel really is a circumstance of the material world where we deal with where Krishna is not involved. Right? As long as we are involved with Krishna, everything around us will appear to be involved with Krishna. The more we identify with the body, everything around us appears to be a part of material nature. It's a question of our internal consciousness. So, we cannot associate at home, and we cannot get better association. In other words, if you're not able to serve the holy names properly, if you're not able to chant properly, whatever we do outside would also not be perfect. If you do not act on your spiritual identity, which is the core of your existence, you are acting on your material identity. And material identities are designed to fail. You're dealing with something that is designed to fail. How could something wonderful come out of such consciousness? You should try it. I'm sure some of you wake up in the morning, chant your required number of malas nicely, and then you step out. Now you are protected by the mantra. It's easier to deal with material energy. It's easier to connect to Krishna. You go out without such protection. After declaring war against material energy, we are in trouble. It's like a soldier who steps out without protection, without the proper weaponry, without the armor. So if you have declared war against material energy, which is taking up devotional service, we are in a foreign environment. And we are going against the rules of material nature by saying that I'm going to lead a spiritual life. So we are declaring war against material nature. We have to protect ourselves. And the protection starts with chanting the holy names. No decision is going to yield wonderful results unless we identify with our spiritual nature. It's not going to work out. Big buildings, civilizations that were extraordinarily successful, every one of them crumbled. But then you notice, what did I say right at the beginning of this class? Haridas Thakur could sit 500 years back and chant under a lotus, under a tulsi tree, 500 years back. He is inspiring us in 2011. That is spiritual potency. It cannot be destroyed. The Acharyas chanted in Vrindavan under trees. 500 years later, they are inspiring us. This is spiritual potency. Spiritual endeavor is not lost. It cannot be lost. It cannot be defeated by material nature. Material nature can cover it. For example, the entire pastimes of Lord Chaitanya were covered for a few hundred years. But that covering is like the sun being covered by clouds. The sun can never go away. The clouds can cover the sun just temporarily. Once the clouds pass, one is able to see that there's sunlight. So if you work on a principle of impermanence, there is going to be impermanence in life. What's the point? What's the point anyways? See, now there is a primary aspect of your life. The primary aspect of your life is to serve the holy names. Your job is supposed to support the chanting of your holy names nicely. That is secondary. That is primary, that is secondary. Both are important because one supports the other. So you take a decision based on the primary. I have to chant nicely. I have to associate nicely. I have to read nicely. I have to be able to serve nicely. All of this is going to allow me again to chant nicely. Then my secondary aspect of life, I arrange it accordingly so that it would support the primary goal. Otherwise, you take a decision on the secondary, which is your job and your relationships and so on and so forth. The secondary can never be a decision taken in isolation, will never work out. It will not work out. It is not meant to work out because that's the nature of material life. How is it meant to work out? Yes. Chant nicely. Chant nicely means understand that that is your last day. Wake up in the morning, understand today is my last day on this planet. It could very well be the case. Please understand this is material nature. It could very well be the case. Wake up in the morning, understand this is the last day on the planet. What activity will you do if you understand that this is the last 24 hours you have? How will you plan your day? What will be your priority? Every day is like that. You wake up in the morning and understand that I will have to keep the holy names in the center because it's most important. So that's how. Chant nicely means you wake up, you keep the holy names in the center. You chant and you hear. There are two things. It is just kirtanam, shravanam. Smaranam, remembrance, will occur automatically when we mature. We don't have to endeavor to remember Krishna at all times. We just have to remember to chant nicely. You call out the holy names and you hear the holy names as you call out. Put all your energy in just hearing. Right? And automatically that is called good chanting. Srila Prabhupada used to say just chant nicely means you hear nicely. Hear what you chant. That's what it means. Anything else? I'm sorry? Where is it? Oh, I'm sorry. How do you identify a Vaishnava? You fundamentally, Vaishnava is a follower of Vishnu. Now, a follower of Vishnu is someone who is constantly going to endeavor to serve the Lord at all times. So, for instance, how do you identify a Vaishnava? You identify a Vaishnava by looking at their mood of being able to steer us and bring us closer to Krishna. So, if someone is able to inspire us and bring us closer to Krishna, such a person is serving Krishna nicely, wonderfully, is a Vaishnava. Right? Being a Vaishnava is an extraordinarily powerful position. We are not Vaishnavas. We are endeavoring to become Vaishnavas. Every one of us is endeavoring to become Vaishnavas. A Vaishnava is a very powerful position, being a servant of Krishna. Being a servant of the Prime Minister is quite powerful. Being a servant of the Supreme Lord is extraordinarily powerful. So we are endeavoring to become a servant of the Supreme Lord. And what does a servant do? A servant glorifies the master. So one servant helps another to become a good servant. So that's how we identify who is a Vaishnava, is someone who is assisting us in becoming a better servant. Because they themselves are working on becoming good servants. What's your name? Thank you. Pure devotee is a Vaishnava. Pure devotee is a Vaishnava. There is Vaishnava Praya, there is Vaishnava Praya, and there is Vaishnava. There is a shadow of a Vaishnava and there's a Vaishnava, just as there's a shadow of the holy names and there is the real holy name. So we are endeavoring to become Vaishnavas, and then there is the pure devotee who is a Vaishnava. Huh? We are endeavoring. So you are on the path of perfection, so one can call themselves Vaishnava. They have gotten on the road of spiritual mercy. But someone has already reached the goal, they have reached the end. There is a difference, but both can be classified in the same manner. Yes. It is. It is. Especially if we are in a conflict with another devotee, we have to pay a lot of attention. We have to pay a lot of attention to that particular relationship. We have to pay a lot of attention to how we could become more humble. Right. The best way to start looking at a conflict is to first accept responsibility. We start thinking that yes, it's my fault. That's the first step. And the second is we start putting ourselves in the other person's shoes so that we could see what they were seeing when the conflict arose. And then the third, those two actions would allow us and give us impetus to be able to resolve such a conflict. Because now at least you have taken steps to understand where the problem lies. But to answer your question, yes, it's extraordinarily important for us to be able to surrender and to understand that Vaishnavas are all important. And if we have a problem with a Vaishnava, put it in the center of your table and start working on yourself. At least resolve the conflict within your heart. So this way, you're opening yourself up for further improvement. Right. See, there are different aspects to it. The idea is that we have to make an endeavor to change our habits in a manner which would facilitate the chanting of the holy names. If the Shastra is saying, wake up early in the morning because it's Brahma Muhurta, the time early in the morning has the ability to give us mercy, then the whole day is sadhana. Because when we eat and when we go to bed is sadhana as well, because it's going to allow us to wake up in the morning to chant the holy names. So if your day and your planning is to be able to wake up early in the morning and chant, then that's wonderful. That's exactly how you begin. You start working on yourself and prioritizing the day based on your ability to chant nicely. So if you feel that you have to wake up early in the morning to chant nicely, then endeavor towards it. We surrender based on three different levels. We surrender the body first. Manasa Deha Geha, it's first the Deha, body, that has to surrender. The physical self has to surrender. Surrender of the physical self is a part of engaging the process of eating and sleeping in the service of Krishna. Engage in the process of eating and sleeping to support chanting. Then you are serving Krishna through the whole process of eating and sleeping. So how much should I eat? How much should I sleep? It's related. If you have to catch a flight at 4 in the morning, what would you do? Would we wake up? We would, right? We would wake up, we'll get on the car, whatever it is, and we would plan for it. In a similar fashion, we will have to be able to plan for the next day's chanting. Right? That's how important it is. I think I'm going to end here. What time is it now? It's 9:45. Okay, I'm back. Yeah. So it was nice. India is always nice as long as you stay in Mayapur. As long as you can engage in the service of Krishna, any place is nice. There's no problem. But there are some nicer places, and that is the Holy Dham. If you are in a place where you walk by at 6 o'clock in the evening, and throughout the street you're hearing Gaurarati, then that is a spiritual world. So Mayapur is extraordinarily special. It's not so much like Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, you have different sampradayas. You have the Advaitas. You have the Shaivite. You have all kinds of sampradayas. It's very complex, Vrindavan. Mayapur is super special because you only have the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So you hear Kibajaya as you walk in the evening at 6 o'clock because everywhere there's Gaura Arati, even though the board says, specific name, this mutt, that mutt, different kinds of mattas are there, but every place there is Gaura Arati, every place there's glorification of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is in the midst of everyone's life in Mayapur. Everyone's life. So that is a place where it will inspire us to be able to chant better. If I were to be given a choice between Vrindavan and Mayapur, I always would go to Mayapur. Mayapur and US. In Mayapur, we go and we get spiritually charged. And we come back here to serve Lord Chaitanya. So it's extraordinarily important to understand that his mission was to spread the holy name. His orders were to go to every town and village and spread the holy names. So we go to Mayapur, we get spiritually charged, and then we start spreading the holy names, the glories of the holy names. That's exactly what we do. Nice. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.